The opening of the infantry building marked a significant step in propelling Australia's armed forces into the next century. The Multi-Technology Centre is stage 2 of a $100 million development at the base and has brought Australia in line with the rest of the world.
The facilities we've got in Australia are just as much state-of-the-art as anything being built around the world. Australia has a very enviable reputation.
The facility includes lecture rooms with modern media and computer equipment. Maintaining a traditional infantry theme, the new building is called Suwakin Hall in honour of soldiers who fought for their country in that battle. Soldiers of the future will reap the benefits of the updated facilities.
We've always maintained a very professional body of instructional staff, and I think that's been the strength of the Australian Army. But now that we have these high technology facilities to back us up, I think it'll make us even better prepared to fight the next war.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
The hundreds of thousands of tonnes of ghastly garbage this region produces every year. It's ugly, it stinks, and it's a disposal headache beyond your worst nightmare. But what if you could turn this mess into an environment-friendly product people would actually pay money for? It sounds like magic, and it is. Take a very large, specially designed drum, throw in some garbage, several billion fierce microorganisms, and in 3 days, hey presto, you have odourless compost. This is the American technology the Port Stephens Council is hoping to import, and so far the ratepayers are behind them.
Everybody says it's environmentally acceptable. I've even been, and this is unusual, people have said, oh, even if it costs a bit more, do it. And I've never heard anyone say that.
The most beautiful thing about this machine is you don't need to do any labour-intensive rubbish sorting before the processing starts. And you can throw in whatever goes to the dump. The Americans have even put a whole cow in there. And the composting process is natural and unbelievably fast. The only problem for Port Stephens is making sure it'll be economically viable. But with landfill becoming an increasingly expensive and environmentally silly option, Council says it's confident this is a plan that will come together. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
"40 of the Mariners players met last night with coach Graham Murray to try and sort out their future. While the Super League is keen to maintain as many of the players within the ranks of the Super League clubs, it seems that's just not possible.
They're throwing a few ideas around that and trying to keep us together as much as they can, but it's pretty hard, and it's up to the individual really to go and talk to the clubs and see how they go.
Noel Goldthorpe is the first to go back to his old ARL club St George, but most players say it will be another week before they know what's going on. While this season is still hazy, next year the players want to be back with the Super League.
The players gave a commitment to be playing for the Mariners in 1997.
In his never say die attitude, Bob Ferris says Super League cannot be stopped.
The concept of taking rugby league globally is just too good a concept. Super League cannot die and it won't die. It's too big and too strong.
Aspiring young league players made the most of the fleeting sunshine at the Taree Rec Grounds as they took part in the gala day. The North Coast Coaching and Development Officer, Steve Hewson, was on hand to teach the under-10s the basic skills of the game while honing the talents of the more experienced players.
Firstly, we started off with a series of warm-ups just to get their hand-eye coordination going, and now we're on to the very basics of rugby league, the play the ball, the standing and running pass and a bit of tackling.
After a morning of drills, the 200-strong group played some trial matches, practice for the upcoming statewide primary school competition at the Westmont Shield. Mr Hewson, who was worried that the ongoing troubles in professional league may be having a negative impact on young players, said he was pleasantly surprised by today's turnout.
Last year we had a bit of trouble with comments about Super League and ARL. The kids actually booed a Super League player. They're influenced by their parents, so there's a strong ARL presence. And I really thought this year that we'd have trouble getting numbers, but as you can see behind me, we've got heaps of kids here and all they want to do is play football.
Simone Cobb, NBN News.
Heroin overdoses are a constant concern for local paramedics. Each week in Newcastle they attend 10 cases, but that number has doubled in the last fortnight with a dangerous high grade of heroin on the streets.
People who do use it get used to a certain strength, and when they get this sort of strength, they go unconscious very quickly, they stop breathing, and they're in a very critical situation.
In Sydney, there have been 7 fatal overdoses in the last 5 days. There have been no deaths here in Newcastle, but paramedics are warning drug users to be careful. Friends or family of users must also be aware and immediately get help if there are problems.
If they have any concerns at all, ring us on 000, get the ambulance there quickly because the patient does become quite critical very quickly.
Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Readdress the situation as far as rosters. We're endeavouring to put more police on the street from the hours of 8 p.m. till 4:30 a.m. and 10 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. when a large amount of people are getting around.
Flapper's not in the same class as Luskin Star, the horse which won Leeds the 1977 Golden Slipper. But Newcastle's premier trainer has her in peak condition for the race, and all he can do now is hope that the rain comes down in buckets.
She won a couple of weeks ago on a wet track at Canterbury, the Sweet Embrace. That's the race that got her into this. So, but you know, she'd have to improve a bit to win from out where she's drawn.
With barrier 14 and the weatherman predicting a fine day, punters may opt for one of Lee's other charges at Rosehill tomorrow. He has 6 in a tough program, with Chlorophyll rated as the best chance in the opening event. To motor racing, and the Motordrome kick-starts its doubleheader tonight with the New South Wales Sidecar Masters. The cars will take over on Saturday for the annual Speed Car Classic and the second last round of the Super Sedan Top Gun Series. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Mother Nature smiled on Surfest today, and former world champ Damien Hartman rose to the occasion, posting the first perfect 10 of the tournament. Despite the solid 1.5 metre swell, the upsets continued, with Gold Coast star Michael Barry eliminated by Nelson Bay's Mitch Dawkins. Hawaiian Sonny Garcia was the event's top draw card, but he stumbled at the first hurdle, eliminated by Nico Patarats and a courageous Todd Prestige. Newcastle's Matt Hoy kept hopes of a hometown win alive, progressing at the expense of Byron Bay's Danny Wills.
I knew I had to get one good one. I had two sort of real average waves. I knew I just had to wait for a good one. I just waited and it came to me, got it in through to the shore. I was stoked.
In the BHP Women's Classic, former world champ Pauline Menzer struck trouble in the semi-finals and was controversially eliminated. Scots head surfer Nerida Falconer dominated the early stages of the decider and held off a determined charge from Wollongong rookie Michelle McManus to claim her second consecutive Surfest crown.
This is the best start I've had to a year. I'm feeling really good. I'm happy with everything in life in general, so I think that helps.
Bruce McKenzie, NBN News. Hawaiian Kalani Robb started the day with a perfect 10. He repeated the dose in the quarterfinals but was still eliminated, while the hopes of a hometown win died when Simon Law and Matt Hoy finished third in their respective round 7 heats. The final featured two Aussies up against two Brazilians, and it was Guilherme Hurdy who stormed to an early lead. Richie Lovett made the charge on behalf of the Australian contingent, while Nico Patarats had his dynamic run stalled by a surfboard that threatened to disintegrate under the pressure of his radical attack. In the dying minutes, Lovett was the only one with a chance of catching Hurdy, but it was the Brazilian who snared the winning wave. Lovett finished second, with Patarats in third and gallant South Coast rookie Shane Werner an impressive fourth. True to form, the boys from Brazil erupted during the presentation. Earlier in the day, Gold Coaster Wayne Dean dominated the longboard final for the second year in a row. Bruce McKenzie, NBN News.
You may recognise the face and the physique. He's the English version of the Aussie Norm, the character Onslow from the British comedy series Keeping Up Appearances.
Did you have to put much work into the character?
No, not too much. Not too much. A little bit, but not too much.
What, do you like a pint?
I like a pint. I'm not keen on Australian beer. I shouldn't say that, should I, really?
Onslow, or should we say Geoffrey Hughes, was turning a few heads at Nobby's Beach today. He's visiting with actor Kimberly Joseph to preview their new play, Only When I Laugh, a comedy about life in the surgical ward of a hospital. And along the way, this Englishman has fallen in love with Newcastle.
But this is wonderful. Look at the lights. Look at the blue sky, the water. I mean, and ships. We haven't seen ships in our ports, for a long time.
Only When I Laugh opens at the Civic Theatre on the 23rd of April.
Since a Mariners meeting last Wednesday, there's been speculation the club told several of its players not to return to the Knights. The Mariners today attempted to put the record straight.
Apart from David Mullane and Richard Swain, I haven't spoken to any of those senior players about where they would like to go. So I or Robert Finch haven't influenced them in any way whatsoever not to go back to the Knights.
In my case, I sort of didn't have much reason to believe that I'd be accepted back there, and that's been backed up by comments that Malcolm Reilly's made in the newspapers last week, and that's fair enough. I didn't really want to go back in any case, but no player's been told where to go and where they can't go.
The Mariners met today with the Knights chief executive Ian Burnett to discuss the matter further.
We gave them a list of players and also their contact phone numbers if they wanted to follow it up. And again, I must stress, it's up to the player now to follow it up with the Knights committee.
This afternoon, the Knights acquired the services of Mariners winger Keith Beecham. In the latest player relocations, Robbie Ross will move to Brisbane, Sargent will link with his former club, Stuart Collins heads to the Steelers, and Tony Iro to the Roosters. Godden and McCormack are still considering several offers, while Murray will assist at Penrith.
I've had preliminary talks with the Penrith club. I got on very good with Royce Simmons and his staff, so at this stage I'll probably help Royce out in some capacity.
The EIS affects state forests between Newcastle, the Hawkesbury River and Muswellbrook and makes recommendations covering the next 10 years. It suggests a number of new conservation measures to maintain populations of endangered flora and fauna. One method includes establishing an additional 8,600 hectares of reserves for timber harvesting, effectively excluding 1/3 of the forests from any kind of logging. Meanwhile, the state government today announced 9 new areas of New South Wales are to be declared as wilderness, bringing the total amount of land protected as wilderness to 1 million hectares. Among the new areas are the Macleay Gorges on the New England tableland and Barrington, northwest of Newcastle. Emma Ossian, NBN News.
Grant Cook and Ben Drury were today working together to put the finishing touches on their Volkswagen. On Friday, they'll be enemies on the racetrack. Both are competing in the 2E club car class of the Australian Hill Climb Championships in the same car, but they'll be opponents. It's actually not as strange as it sounds. Because the event is an individual race against the clock, co-owners can both drive the car, competing against each other. Grant Cook, who's currently leading his class in the state titles, says while it may look modest, the Volkswagen is his first choice for hill climbing.
Well, I was offered a drive in Ben's actually road car that was as quick as the race car. And I turned my nose up at a Volkswagen to start with, but by the Christ, once you've driven one, you never go back.
The 750-metre track, part of Mount Panorama's famous race circuit, is one of the most popular in the country, with the best drivers completing the climb in under 32 seconds.
It's a very good track to race on. It's a bit of a drag race up the hill. There's only really, you've just got to get through the dipper and the first forest elbow. The rest is pretty much full throttle.
Fellow Novocastrian Mick Potter, who'll also be competing in the 2E class in the 2 to 3 litre division, is in with a good chance with a new, faster car. Laura Saperstein, NBN News. The declaration covers 32,500 hectares of the 36,500 hectare Barrington Tops National Park. The government's intention is to protect threatened native species, conserve fragile forest ecosystems and protect the Hunters Water catchment area. But the decision hasn't delighted all parties. The Wilderness Society has claimed the battle isn't over until the entire 63,000 hectares of the Barrington Tops is included in the declaration. Meanwhile, the member for Upper Hunter, George Souris, and the Public Land Users Alliance have slammed the government for a lack of consultation over the issue. They claim the declaration will lock out recreational users and have labelled the government treacherous for making a snap decision in the lead up to the Easter holiday weekend. The acting Environment Minister, Bob Debus, says four-wheel drive and other users won't be adversely affected, with the Bicentennial Trail and Barrington Trail to Mount Barrington excluded from the wilderness.
A few smoke stains on the shed were the only visible reminders of the backyard tragedy. Firefighters were called to the Newcastle suburb of Carrington just before 9 this morning, but the damage had already been done.
Both run around and I've jumped up on the fence and all I could see was this tin shed, black smoke coming out of it, fire coming out of it and this baby crying and screaming and yelling out.
2 truck drivers from a neighbouring hotel and the father of the child tried to break into the shed.
They jumped the fence or something and then went in there and kicked the shed in.
The father of the children has gone in to try and get the other 3-year-old boy out of the fire, but unfortunately was unsuccessful, and the 3-year-old boys received fatal injuries in the fire.
The victim's 6-year-old brother has been taken to Newcastle's Mater Hospital with smoke inhalation. Both parents have been admitted for shock, the father also treated for burns to his hands. The death has shocked the tight-knit community, with the toddler having arrived from Gunnedah with his family only a couple of months ago.
It's very upsetting, especially a child. It's bad enough with an adult, let alone a poor little child that can't help itself.
Police haven't been able to talk to the 6-year-old about how the fire started. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
As my friend Sue and I were leaving the other evening, we had a gentleman from across the road yell out, you know, that's one of them, that's one of them, and we could see a little girl that was standing over there. I don't know what these people are telling the children.
Karen is one of 2 women who have worked privately out of this Newcastle house in Griffiths Road, Lambton, since February, to the despair of neighbours.
Well, I believe a lot of it's unwarranted. Since we've been here, which has been 6 weeks, we've always run it privately. We only have rear access to the premises and it is all by appointment.
Residents who live across the road from the brothel claim it will attract undesirable types to the area and they fear for their children's safety. But no one would speak on camera about those concerns. The call for the brothel to close comes just hours before Newcastle Council puts its draft regulations for disorderly houses on public display. Deputy Lord Mayor John Menning says the legislation is designed to keep brothels open unless they intrude on suburban neighbourhoods.
Well, if they act in a disorderly manner, but more particularly if they're near schools, churches, residences, and if they impact in any way on businesses that are in the vicinity.
In the beginning, when we looked at this premises, that legally we would be right because of the fact we are in an industrial area. We have no, neighbours either side of us and that. So at this stage, we still believe, yes, we are legally right.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
As the cranes lowered the demountable classrooms into place, the temporary school began to take shape. In the background, the gutted shell of Belmont Primary School's main building, a stark reminder of the inferno that tore through it in just 2 hours last week, causing more than $4 million in damage. Just 24 hours later, portable classrooms, administration offices, a canteen and shelter were on their way. Today, they arrived by convoy from Cessnock Jail and Toronto High School, the scene of an equally devastating fire last year. As police investigations into the cause of the fire continue, staff and parents are working together to bring the school back to working order. More than 30 parents spent the Easter break cleaning up and filing what was salvaged from the fire.
That kind of support and commitment gives us the strength and energy to go on.
Tomorrow, teachers will hold a planning meeting in the school's new library, which escaped the blaze. Students will return to their new-look school in shifts, with the senior classes settling in first.
I'm looking forward to having the children back because they'll make it all human again.
Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
This Suzuki is really swift.
4 times the horsepower of a standard Suzuki, different suspension, better braking. It's a balanced package between braking, handling and performance. You can't have one without the other, they have to go hand in hand.
But power wasn't enough for Gary Cross in last year's Targa Tasmania. He finished 140th after going through 3 gearboxes. Cross believes he now has the reliability as well as the horsepower to finish in the top 20.
A little bit more development time. Last year it was built and on the trail of the day that we completed it was the day we left. This year we've had 12 months of testing and trialling. We've done a number of events at Oran Park and Amaru Park with different car clubs.
Cessnock's Aaron Lewis will be trying to finish his first Targa from 5 attempts in his 1976 Jaguar. His father Dick will also be trying to achieve a special milestone in his 67 Jag.
Well, my car's faster than ever, but Jack's is the one we're really concentrating on because this year is after his 3rd straight plate, which would give him a gold Targa, which is really the aim of every competitor.
It's the 5th annual Targa Tasmania, with more than 200 competitors to crisscross the Apple Isle when it rolls into action next week. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
The tragedy claimed the life of 3-year-old Nathan Anthony Wyndon. He had been playing in the backyard shed of his Robertson Street home with his older brother around 8:30 yesterday morning when a mattress apparently caught alight. Frantic efforts by his parents and staff from a nearby hotel to save Nathan were fruitless. Today, the acting Chief Superintendent of the Newcastle Fire Brigade, Doug Crotty, said there are some positive things parents can do to reduce the chances of a similar tragedy occurring. Another ploy is to discard any unused lighters and matches, or at least lock them away.
If they've got matches or cigarette lighters around the house that aren't really needed, get rid of them. Keep, say, one cigarette lighter in an area where they know it is and it's away from the kids, and preferably a child-proof lighter.
The so-called child-proof lighter has an inbuilt safety mechanism which makes it more difficult for the flame to be ignited.
For some young sailors, this is their first step towards the America's Cup, the Australian Secondary Schools Championship on Lake Macquarie. Today was number 1 of 4 heats, and with up to 100 craft out in the water, it called for some skillful sailing.
Bit chaotic out here. What do you think about all the boats all over the place?
Scary, yeah.
And while the competitors were hard at work back on dry land, the mums and dads were with them all the way.
It's very exciting. I'm calming down a little, but yesterday, the first day, it was nerve-wracking.
Adam Chapman from Sydney's Hunters Hill High was one of the stars today, winning both line honours and handicap in Division 2. Scott Clark from Henry Kendall High on the Central Coast was a standout in the sailboarding. Racing continues tomorrow. One young crew is looking to scare their opponents. They've shaven their heads for that mean machine advantage. Peter Ryan, NBN News.